Hello everyone, Daryl with you here today. I'm going to do a Photoshop editing session in a different manner from how I have in the past, where those sessions as I recorded them have often gone quite long, approaching an hour and a half or so. And for the time that I spend on the editing, I really don't want to be spending the additional time to go back and edit my recorded video too much, if any. But I also want to keep the video shorter if possible. So with that in mind, here is an image from Sergey Joseph, and he has an h-moddded camera that he recently did a series of images from, with the deep sky stacker output being what you see here. So editing this image from Sergey is just a challenge for myself to learn more. But rather than take you through all the thought processes as I perform my editing, I decided to try a different approach. So I edited the image and labeled, I created multiple layers along the way, kind of documenting loosely some of the steps I performed. My intent was simply to go back to the starting layer and start revisiting, as an example here, the very first application of levels to the original image and expanding that to see what settings I used. But it seemed to me that Photoshop was resetting the sliders, and all I was seeing really was the resulting histogram for how I might have originally applied the sliders. And I was really stumbling on recalling exactly what I did. So what we're doing today, I'm hoping this will still be a relatively short video and hopefully meaningful to anyone watching. What I've done, instead of trying to regress in the original edit and revisit everything, is I made a copy of all of the layers, a screen capture of all of the layers annotated the way I had them. And now we're going to use those as sort of a working script to perform a brand new edit on this same image. And hopefully this will go a little more smoothly, because I will see more specifically the type of changes I expected to for my edits. That said, I also realize another issue. This is a screen capture, so I can't actually open each adjustment layer and see what those adjustments are. So I do need the original image to do that. What I'm going to do, I think, is move this off to another screen. So that way I can go over to my other screen and click on it to get the layers, then return to the current editing session, while still having displayed here on the left side the screen snap of the layers from the original editing session, if that makes sense. So we kind of see from the capture how we're going to progress, but we will have to use the original layers to get some sense of what edits I performed. All those disclaimers aside, let's get started. So the first thing to notice is we are starting off with a 32-bit per channel stack out of deep sky stacker. And I do choose to usually stay in that 32-bit per channel mode as long as I can, on the assumption that we've got more data there to work with, and therefore any manipulations of the image will be smoother. You know, the less data you have to work with, the less the software is able to interpolate, midpoints between some of that data in applying adjustments we make. We will get to a point where we can't proceed further without being in the 16-bit per channel mode, and we'll do that when we get there. So starting off, we have this image of the Great Orion Nebula and Running Man off to the left here in this case. There does appear to be some rather bloated stars in the, I think they call this the trapezium area of Great Orion, quite blown out. So the exposure is not as ideal as we might like, but we accept that. So the first edit I will make is apply a levels layer, and I've got this plugin called Configurator Reloaded, which is this panel of buttons you see down the side here, and I will often be using that instead of going directly through the Photoshop menus because it's a quick, convenient way to access the things I've chosen to develop buttons for. One of which is the levels layer. Another I'll mention is, I call it Add Merged Layer. This is equivalent to Alt-Control-Shift-N and then E, still holding down Alt-Control-Shift. And that will create a new layer and then merge visible layers into that new layer. So Add Merge Layer will be my shortcut for that. So the first thing we're going to do is apply a levels layer, and most often what I'm doing here now is I don't even work in the RGB mode. I go directly to a per channel type of edit and pretty routinely just bring my shadows over to the left side of the curve, midpoints over to the right side where I start seeing data beginning to curve upward. Now, it's not uncommon that I will take it in even here, clipping off that first little bit of data at the bottom, which in this case, as we look at the image, just tends to brighten those reds even more. And in this case, you know, we've got a heavily red tinted image anyway, so I don't think I want to amplify the reds any more than I have to. So we will just touch where the midpoints start on the, well, that's not really the right way of saying it. We will slide the midpoints over to where data first starts appearing on the histogram. Going into green, we'll do the same thing. Shadows to the left, mids to the start of the right. Now there is one little blip of data there that I'm going to skip over, where I really see just sort of the solid area of the curve starting to take shape. I really wish there was a way of making that bigger in Photoshop, but I don't believe there is. So we just have to live with these small histograms. Then we'll go into the blue channel, and again, shadows in from the left, mids in from the right. And this effectively has the result of stretching that curve out, which would be apparent if we could apply that directly now and see an update of the curves. But that really doesn't happen until we then move to our next step, which will be applying a second set of curves, another set of levels. And usually what this is for me would be only a shadows adjustment on the left, still on a per channel basis. So we'll go to red. And you see there's not really even that much to work with there. So I'm just going to skip over that because, again, we know we have a red dominant image anyway. Let's see what green looks like. Now there we've got quite a bit of area to bring in our shadows and darken up the image some. And when we adjust either the shadows or the highlights, that will always cause a shift of the midpoint slider, which right now we see on 1. And I don't typically make any effort to reset the midpoints. I let them shift accordingly. And I'm pretty sure that's what I did in the original image. I only made a blacks level adjustment. And then we did that again on the blues. Probably left the reds alone because there's so little to work with. Let's see what happens if we go ahead and, yeah, if we clip that first little bit, I don't see anything there that would really influence me into thinking that's necessarily an improvement. So I'm just going to leave that alone. So for that level, for that level's adjustment, we're not editing the red channel. And then I went ahead and visited it again with yet a third levels adjustment. And this would be kind of a departure from the norm for me, because usually I find mids and shadows on one adjustment layer, shadows only on the second is enough to get me more where I want to be. But in this case, I still felt like I wanted to go with one additional layer of level adjustments. And go to our reds. Still not really seeing much there. The greens, this is all looking pretty good to me actually. Not quite slammed up against the left, just a little wisp of a curve. So that third level layer, that may have been something where I started to explore a change and then wound up doing nothing and forgot to delete the layer. So let's look at the original editing session. And boom, boom, boom. There is how it looked by the time I applied the third levels adjustment. So we'll turn that off. And there's no change. So yes, that third level layers adjustment is to be ignored. So we will not do that for the new one. So let me just delete that. And at that point, I just decided, okay, let's go ahead and merge those adjustments into the original. So I add a merged layer. And then I applied an adjustment layer for the channel mixer. And this is probably to try and subtract out some red. I don't have a button for that, so we'll go the old-fashioned way. Now, just for a moment, I'll reselect my original image, the channel mixer button. So we dropped our reds to 46, greens to 44, blues to 67. 46, 44, 67. So we'll do the same here. 46 on green. I mean on red. 44 on the green channel. And 67 on the blue channel. And how has that affected things? Let's turn it on and off to kind of proof it. Well, it reduced the red cast some. It certainly seems to have pulled down the overall brightness too. I guess I felt like this looked a little more like a natural color across the image and the color of space, almost like a cloudy haze over it. And then we went back to another levels layer. Let's look at our reds, greens, blues. Okay, so in this case, we had no shadow area to work with, and I may very well have repeated a midtones adjustment. Let's see if I can get a sense of that. Looking at my original image. See, the sliders are way out of whack from what you'd kind of expect to see. So I can't really interpret from that what change I made. So we'll return now to the original image. I'm going to assume that I did in fact just go to each channel and readjust the midtones back to the curve. Like so. Not quite sure what that bought. This was probably just an exploration, just trying to figure out where I might be going with all this, as I'm doing again now. So let's just bring our original image back into view. Whoops. So there's the original. I'll offset it a little bit here, overlapping. And let's turn on the changes we've made. So we do the channel mixer. Now we come in and we apply our levels edit. Okay, it looks just a little bit darker than where we're at currently, but otherwise pretty similar. So that suggests to me I'm on the right track with what I had done. So coming back to our current session, we then added yet another levels layer. So this is probably to see if the edits opened up a chance to go in and attack the shadows more. And the way that the histogram updated, even at the RGB curve level, suggests to me that yes, indeed, if we go in channel by channel, exactly what I thought. We now have room to close in the shadows, darken the image a bit more, accept the shift in the midtones with no edits to them. And we have this result. Then once again, I do another merge to a new layer, and this is the point where I do a 16-bit mode shift, 16 bits per channel. And that's because I really want to start looking at the histogram. We've got this histogram in the properties panel for the levels, but I want to look at the one that gives the RGB histogram side by side, and you can't do that in 32-bit per channel mode. So let's create our merge layer, and I did that wrong. It may not affect anything. I don't think it does. I always try to turn off any layers I don't want incorporated in that merge. But we had this prior layer that was already a merge. So it's not like we're seeing anything more than we would otherwise had the original levels been turned off like that, that's kind of my own little idiosyncrasies of editing. Anytime I create a merge layer, I generally like to turn off the layers ahead of it. So it kind of is a way to emphasize to myself, okay, the only thing you're working with is where you've got that visible eye. So that's what we've got now. And we will do our mode conversion. And I'm not going to merge because I want to keep those layers independent. And as a result of that, the exposure and gamma settings is the default option. And that looks pretty good. We've already got our RGB channels pretty well lined up. It looks like red is a little bit wider. If you look at the composite curve at the top, it kind of spreads out on each side, as does maybe blue a little, or green. I guess the green does. But my next step here, I say I further align the channels. And this is kind of coming back to me here. I probably went a little stronger on some than others, allowing a bit of clipping to occur. But again, I'm still trying to darken the image. And this was done by a levels layer once again. So we look at our reds, and I just clip off the shadows, and there's a little bit, very, very low-lying data there. So I really come over to where I start seeing more of, once again, a little bit of a climb away from the bottom line. And I don't adjust the mids or highlights typically until I start seeing the shape of the other curves relative to these. So let's go to green, clip that off a bit more. Now at this point, I'm kind of looking at where it is relative to the red channel above it. And I'm clipping it at about the same point on the shadows. And for blue, I'll do the same. But now in this case for the blue, you can see when I get to where that little hill starts, if we look at the alignment here in the histogram panel, you know, this tallest area there of the blue curve seems like it's still a bit right of the other two. So I'll go ahead and clip the shadows a bit more to bring it in. That looks pretty much centered under the green. And now, you know, I feel pretty happy with that. But sometimes what I will do, and I may well have done this as well, as we see from the histogram, we've got some red overextending the green and the blue channels. So I may have played with the midtones to try and kind of compress that kind of triangular hill of red to be a little bit narrower, more akin to the green and blue. And that's usually done with the midtones adjustment. Let's see how, oh, I'm on the blue channel. Oops. That was probably on 1. It should have been. Yeah. So let's go back to red. Play with the midtones. And there, see, it didn't take much at all. A little shift in the midtones. Squeeze the red down to right about there. Is a very similar size. There's a little bit of overlap on the left, but I would consider that to be a pretty good alignment of the channels. And let's see how that compares to the original image. Bring it back into view. Whoops. So we progress through our mode changes and our application of aligning the channels. Okay, so they look actually a little bit different. Blue is not quite aligned with the red and greens. It's actually shifted left. I don't know any reason for that. Let's go back to our current session. And if we were to, okay, possibly, well, no, this is not why. I started saying possibly the reason I shifted it left was I could see this leading area where there's no data, but our slider is still brought into the hill more. So it may have been visually looking at this, maybe I just thought that the overall cast of the image seemed a little blue to me. I can't say that right now looking at it. But let's move our shadows in even further. What's that doing for us? That's not doing a thing for me now. So I'm going to leave it about where I had it originally and just go with that. Okay, so we aligned our channels, and once again we merged them because I wanted to go and try applying the gradient exterminator from RC Astro, Russell Cronin Astrophotography. So we're merging our new level adjustments into the prior layer, and now we can go to gradient exterminator, and I do usually pretty commonly stick with the medium detail, medium aggressiveness. Let me hide the histogram so we can see more how this is affecting the overall image. Got that big old blob down there in the bottom corner. Things like this I don't worry about too much, because in the case of this image, I really consider the main subject to be, the Great Orion Nebula and Running Man Nebula and some of these surrounding stars. So I do anticipate cropping, and I just don't worry about that bottom left corner. Likewise, here up at the top right, there's some kind of a strange artifact, or maybe it's a scratch or some kind of debris on the sensor or sensor glass. So we go to gradient exterminator, applying the medium settings, detail and aggressiveness, and there's the end result. It even cleaned up that bottom left corner a little, so I'm happy with that. It seems to have kind of evened out this haze, I'm going to call it. I guess it's just sort of a low contrast look across the width of the image. Let's undo that for a minute just to revisit what it's doing. So yeah, so over here on the right you can see some darker areas, and it smoothed all that out. At the same time, it seemed like it kind of, did it brighten the right side a little? No, it didn't brighten it, it darkened it some. So I feel like that's doing something positive, especially again if I just look at it with respect to where I will probably be cropping later. So that is with gradient exterminator applied, and then once more I realign the channels. So another levels layer with our histogram turned on. Okay, now in this case, our RGB channels, there's a little bit of different width in these spikes, but mainly what I see here is that once again, it seems like the way the gradient exterminator distributed the color, it really opens up an opportunity to close in the shadows more and darken the image, which is a direction I would want to be going. So with the histograms visible, we'll go to the red channel, move our sliders over on the shadows for reds, green, and blue. And that's pretty much all we need to do. The curves even seem to kind of thicken up a little bit. Red just maybe ever so slightly wider. Not enough that I would even bother making any further edits. And you can see our sky overall looks better. I mean, we've got a lot of sort of this haziness or noise, but I do vaguely recall. I just wasn't sure how best to deal with that, and anticipate I will be just going in with a burning tool and burning away the haze by darkening it. So that levels adjustment I'm going to leave as is. I wonder, let's see what the red looks like again. You know, the red is just ever so slightly thicker than the green and blue. We could probably tighten it up a little. Oh, that's RGB, darn it. Okay, red. So we adjust the midpoint on the red to kind of skinny it up. And then let's go ahead and pull down our blue and green a little more. So this will just, again, have the effect of darkening the skies even more, even though we'll be clipping a little bit here. We'll see if we like that end result even better. I've got a feeling I will. Dark is good, especially with that haze, whatever it is. Yeah, let's go with that. Looking pretty good, I feel like. And so that was, where are we at here? Realigning the channel. So then I'd do another merge visible to a new layer. And at that point, I duplicate this layer and apply the camera raw filter with edits to the basic settings, noise, the details, and fringe. So the reason I duplicated the layer, I mean, we could obviously work directly on this layer 4, but I duplicated it just in case whatever edits I make through camera raw, I might want to mask that layer and selectively edit away some of the changes so the underlying layer comes through. So now the question is, what did we do in camera raw? Well, let me just scroll over because I've also got a capture of that. I think usually the first thing I do is take a look at the noise. So let's bring our camera raw filter in. Can I hide my histogram? Whoops. That came in from the wrong image. That's not what we want. Go ahead and hide my histogram. So on our active working edit, we go to camera raw filter. 46, 21, and 5 is what I went with on the noise settings. So we're going to zoom in here on Great Orion. And you can see this, you know, the speckled multicolored mottling. So usually what I do is increase color noise until that kind of goes toward a gray tone, getting rid of some of the colors in the dark areas. Even 3 seems to do it. I believe I had 5. And then I increase noise reduction as little as possible, but enough to kind of smooth out some of that grayishness. Okay, 22 is a little bit of overkill. I think 15 was what I had used, and that's what I'm going to stay with. Oh no, I used 21. 46, 21, 5. What does 21 do for us? Okay, maybe I do like that a little better. And sharpening, I don't like to, sharpen too much because I feel like that almost tends to give us back, in a way, the noise presence, but it also restores a bit of detail. I'm just going to go with the 46 that we had. And we'll zoom back out. Let's see how that looks like. Very subtle, but an improvement. Now, one thing I really don't like is these thick, I keep calling them coronas or comas. I forget what my word is. I saw earlier someone call them a halo, and that's much more appropriate. So this thick halo around the stars, I don't like that. So I want to reduce that. And the main way I know to do it is by going in under optics and trying to apply a fringe reduction. So we'll click on this kind of orangish pink tone. And that made no difference, at least on that particular star, it doesn't look like. If it does, it's such a subtle difference, I can't see it. Move over to this other star. And these all seem to be pretty much the same cast. Okay, that one. I guess what this is just, there's certain color tones that I guess are dominant, that maybe that's what comes through more, causing that halo effect. That does seem to have improved things in general, but we still have, the colored halo over here around this star to the right of Orion, Great Orion. I don't think we can improve that anymore. And see, that actually kind of undid what we changed off the other star, which was giving us the best results. So I'll return to that. Use that as our source for defringing. And I really don't like this gray stroking around that trapezium area of Great Orion. Likewise, this star here around, I always call this a helmet. That's what I think of. The shape of that thing kind of looks like an open motorcycle helmet. It's kind of strange, that squarish shaped star. And I believe that the thing I found here to help was a temperature change. And let's see if I show a temperature edit. I can't actually scroll over to it. So let's just go ahead and expand our basics and try a very minor temperature shift. Yeah. See, it kind of intensifies those red tones in such a way that they start dominating over that grayish fringe. But we don't want to go too much like that. It may be exaggerating things too much. And it also, see, it bumps right back up the fringe around the stars. So it's really, it's a tricky situation. Plus the overall intensification of the color tones throughout the dark space, I don't like. So we don't want to apply that any more than necessary. Maybe not at all. Might have to try and address that by some other technique. Okay. So, and of course, I've still got quite a few edits to make down through the rest of the other settings. And I think what I'm going to do, since I can't see what I had changed. Actually, let me check. Maybe I've got another image available to me, not on screen. I don't see it. I thought I might still have a screen capture of the control panel. No, I don't see it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just these changes that we've got thus far, I'm going to go ahead and OK this. Let those changes be applied so that I can go to this other image and scroll it over so I can see what I did in the basics panel. Did I not apply that? It looks like, let's see. No, I did. We're good. Okay, so let's continue on with camera raw. Whoops, not that way. Need to invoke it directly. Let's shrink it down some too so we can see what our other panel shows us. Okay, so I did, as I thought, I did increase the temperature slightly. There's 5. Plus 5 is what I did. Use my arrow key here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this level of zoom, I'm not seeing much impact, so I'm not going to change that. I'm going to leave it at 0. Then we pulled down the highlights and shadows, boosted the whites and the blacks. So this was largely in an effort of trying to control how these stars are blooming. You see if we boost the highlights, they just kind of explode on us. And also trying to stay mindful of that, the trapezium area of Great Orion. I just don't want to blow that out any more than it already is. So we'll bring that down to the value I had of -47. Shadows at -39. What do changing them do for us? It darkens the skies. Those mid-tones going a little darker. And right about there, we get to a point where anything further seems less noticeable. Okay. Let's go with that. Yeah, -39. Okay, and whites and blacks. So if we boost the whites, that would probably make our stars explode again. And it does, of course. So we pull those down. Or do we boost them? We boosted them, actually. I may have been trying to bring out a little bit of the faint detail in Great Orion. And let's zoom in for a bit. So as we brighten the whites, or boost the whites, it does start causing that brightness in the trapezium to grow a little bit, kind of infringing on the gray, thus shrinking it a little, but not much. So we'll just stick with the value I use of +23. And blacks. Oh, that's a -23 that I did on black. So with the changes I've made thus far, it was starting to brighten the sky, so pulling our blacks down darkens it again. Now the texture was the one that I almost never use texture, and I discovered it was really quite good to use here because it really smooths out some of this. I'm just going to call it noise. I don't know if that's what it is or not in the image. So we went with minus 36. I'm just going to show you, kind of what happens, exaggerating things. So you can see it really kind of sharpens the stars almost, but noticeably it smooths out that noisy gray haze if we pull it down. So minus 36, that's what I had. Okay. And then dehaze is another one I enjoy making use of to see what it does. So if we boost it, once again, it helps clear out some of that noisy haze. But we also see how it's closing down the nebulosity of the fringe areas around Great Orion. And I like having as much of that as I can get. So you got to just find a compromise. I'm currently at what, plus 35, and I use plus 16. So I didn't go with that quite as heavy. There's plus 16. And then with that done, I'll then play with clarity, which kind of helps start bringing back some of that faint nebulosity. But you don't want to overdo it, or it really starts affecting the highlighted areas more than I care for. Actually, it's kind of funny here as I look at it. Now, I don't like how it's bringing that haze back dominant in the space around Orion. But I do like how it is kind of brightening up Orion itself. And what did I use? On clarity, I get plus 17, not much of a change at all. I think what happened was I let the effects on space scare me. But let's zoom in here for a little closer look at what's happening. Brightening the star. Not so much in a way that I think is bad. In fact, if it was originally at 0, that's part of what was throwing me off here, is I was allowing myself to drop it below 0. So the changes were more obvious. So there's 0. If we boost it, it's really not changing the core that much. Doesn't seem to be. But it is sort of amplifying the fringe nebulosity. So let's see there. Plus 30, that's compared to what? Plus 17. It's a little more aggressive than I first did. But I think just for grins, I'm going to leave that one as is. And vibrance and saturation, I always like to punch up, just trying to get a little more oomph out of the photo for however the colors might be muted. Plus 50 on saturation is quite a bit. What does that do to our stars and their halos? Yeah, it really starts making those halos stronger. So we'll keep that under control. There's 15, 16. Okay, I had used 15. I'll just leave it there at 16. And vibrance. So if we overdo that, it really hits that core area. If we pull it down, it seems to kind of soften that grayish, but we also lose the saturation that I want. not seeing a huge difference in here. There's a subtle amount if I go with what, around 30 versus what, I had 31. Okay, we'll just leave it there. And let's revisit our corona again, the fringe. Now, since I applied the earlier camera raw filter once, we might actually be able to get sort of a compound effect of this if we hit it again. I don't know how camera raw works, if it's an additive thing or if it repeats, if it compounds its previous applications, which is kind of what I do expect. I mean, that would be a more normal process. If we select fringe, we got 3070 on the purple hue, 4060 on the other. Those almost sound like defaults. I think clean that up. Okay, let's go with that. I may have gotten a combined effect from, as I would tend to expect, from two applications of camera raw. I don't think there's anything we can do about this gray, but well, that is picking up on it too. So kind of got a choice there, one or the other. 3768, 4060. I could always come back in again and hit that once more. Let's do that. Do a little bit of variation from my original edit because we're learning as we go. So we'll defringe and everything else is good, and we'll apply that. Now let's just add a new step. We'll reselect camera raw. Zoom back in here and we're back to our optics. I'm scared that, well, okay, that's good. So the basics got reset. Detail, okay, good. Details got reset. So there should not be any changes then except to optics. Select our fringe and select this gray color, grayish purple. Not really responding much. Now that one, around that little small squarish star, selecting its fringe cleaned it up quite a bit. So we'll just use that instead. Yeah, it's working better for that. Well, whatever I selected there on the larger bright area kind of messed that up. Okay. So there's sort of a darker gray or something right in there that's working to our advantage. So we'll let it go at that. I still don't like that gray area, but let's see what other edits came after this. Okay. Selecting the HOTS, expanding, feathering, and Gaussian blur. So this is where I try to tackle that gray fringe. So we've got our camera raw applied. And what I call HOTS here in this layer, I'm just referring to all these especially larger, brighter stars, which we've now actually cleaned up more than my original edit did. But this larger one over here toward the right, we can see also sort of a grayish blue halo around it. So this was just a selective edit just on those few stars by way of using the magic wand tool. So we'll select that with a W, and we'll hit the brighter stars, and then shift click for additional ones. Now that one grabbed a whole lot more than I expected. So let me alt-click to see if it undoes it. Did I lose everything? Looks like I did. Darn it. My tolerance is 15. Let's tighten that up to a 10. Sample size, we'll reduce that to 3 by 3. That looks better. So here you'll notice I am trying to go out and grab more of this fringe area. Probably do the same thing here. Yep. These don't look so bad. I'm hitting most of these brighter stars so that all are affected in a somewhat similar way, just for the sake of consistency. Do we want these other stars? Let's go ahead and grab them too. They've got a bit of an orange fringe to them, but I think I'm selecting more than I did originally. Down here in the far corner, I'm not worried. We will crop some of these out, maybe even the ones I'm selecting. Okay, so we've got our HOTS, as I called them, selected, and we want to expand them. Select, modify, expand by 6 pixels, sounds pretty good. And then feather them to about half that amount, so it kind of feathers back inwards in a sense. And then Gaussian blur. So let's go ahead and zoom in so we can see the impacts on this a little better. So my idea here is I just want to see if I can kind of blend in that fringing color around these hot areas so that it's at least a little less apparent. So we go to Filter, Noise, Gaussian. Oh no, Blur. Blur Gaussian. There we go. Let me turn off my marching ants too, so Control H to hide that. And I think the changes of Gaussian blur also show up in the image, not just the preview. Yeah, they do. Okay. We don't want to go with 1,000 though. Just start bringing it up until I see a little change. .3 is not much. Six. 10. I would say 10 looks pretty good. You know, a little soft, sure, but Well, and this is an example here of where we want to mask things. Again, what I call the helmet of Orion. I don't like how soft that star makes the helmet itself seem softer. It's kind of funny as I'm reducing these. I almost feel like the blur is slow to respond. Let's look in our preview window. Okay. So 9 really, 9.4. Affected 7. That's not even so bad at that level. A little bit of gray is obvious. 7.6. Let's go with that. Okay, so select expand feather. All right. Now at this point, I don't see that I very likely had made any edit of the mask in the original. But let me pull it over to actually look at this closer. So we'll turn on our layers, get up here, select the hots, and let's view our mask. Yeah, no edits on the mask after doing the Gaussian blur. However, I do feel like with this current edit session, I do want to use the mask. So we'll just click on that and grab our brush, which is pretty small as is. It looks like it's about the size I would want. Let's increase it a little. That's good. 39% hardness with a 50% flow. Opacity 100%. That doesn't sound so bad. It may flow a little hard. If so, we'll just undo it. So, oh, we need to turn on a mask. I was looking at the wrong layer there a minute ago. Okay, we'll create a mask. Something about that I did wrong. Vector mask thumbnail. Okay, that's more what I was after. I don't know why this first mask is the way that it is. me delete that inner mask. That's weird. I don't know what's going on there. At least I've got now more what I was after, which was I have this, white mask showing relative to the edited layer. So we'll click on that mask, select it. We've got our brush active. Let's be sure if this is, oh, well, that's not doing what I thought. Let me back up. This isn't working as I expected. Okay, another approach I know I can do is simply erase away part of this layer and let the underlying layer shine through. So we'll go to our eraser tool, 28 pixel with 50% flow still. Let's soften it up a little more and increase the size a bit. Okay, so now we'll just erase away where we blurred there over the helmet, bringing back a little sharpness to that star, giving a little sense of sharpness to the helmet. And that may be the only thing I want to mess with. Just hitting these stars with the erase brings a little bit of heat, a little bit of spot brightness back through without bringing back the fringe so badly. So I like that. It gives back a little bit of accented brightness. Now Running Man I can't seem to do much with. It's just, I think the exposure and the haziness is just such that it's hard to get any details out of it. So I'm not going to fight that any. Okay, next step. Perimeter burn with 10% something. Let me look at my original image. Perimeter burn with 10% exposure, large soft brush. And I copied that for some reason. I don't know why, but we're nearly done, folks. Gosh, this is still a long video. I can't make these videos short, it seems. So we go to our exposure tool. Exposure is 10%, and it's pretty large. We can make it a little bigger. It kind of jumps on me there. Let's just manually make it 700. Very soft, 10% feather, 10% exposure, so it'll lay down rather gently. I just kind of brush across the image to darken things. It seems like it's not even doing anything, is it? Oh, let's check. I think I still had those stars. Yeah. That's why nothing was happening. I had my ants hidden, so we were only affecting the selected areas. So now I've got a Control D to deselect, and we can now burn in around the perimeter. That looks better. Just kind of not drawing any hard lines, just kind of quickly brushing over it, hitting in a little toward the nebulosity. And see if we can really clean up a lot in that bottom left corner where there's not a lot of detail we care about anyway. Just quickly smacking over the nebula itself. Thins out the haziness in there, and that looks pretty good. I mean, we could still do better, but for the sake of this video, I think I'm pretty comfortable with that. And do a high pass sharpen. I don't see any place in here where I mentioned the cropping. And I've got a second layer of perimeter burn that I don't know. That was probably a mistake. I just duplicated. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and hide that panel, that image. Expand this one. And oops. Let's get our crop tool. Stay with original ratio and Alt Shift to bring it in proportionally on all sides. The orientation, that's not bad. I believe normally in the sky though, Orion would appear a little more vertical, you know, like so, because it's in that the sword of Orion. So I think just for a little bit of artistic license on the edit, that's what I'm going to do, is not quite rotate it vertical, but at least a little more where the helmet is kind of aiming more upwards or off to the side. I personally just favor that orientation, I believe. Bring the crop in enough, and we'll go with that. Not bad. And the last step I would do is I want to just see if I can bump the sharpness a little. And I really like doing sharpening with a high pass filter. It's not really, I guess, intended so much for sharpening, but we'll go in and duplicate that layer. Go to filter high pass, or filter other high pass. And we want to choose a radius that really starts kind of grabbing some of the edge details without overdoing it. For example, that's overdoing it. I don't think I typically ever see my colors start popping through in that low relief image of this filter. In this case, okay, right about there, I'd say. Let's apply that. And let's see what hard light looks like. And we'll just toggle these on and off. So it brings back a little bit of the noise glow, I'll call it. But the hard lighting, I like that pretty well. Let's see what soft light looks like. Not as pronounced a change. It's gentler on the noise, that's for sure. So if I went with soft lighting, I'd probably just leave it like that with 100% opacity. But I do feel like I favor the hard light, in which case I will reduce opacity so the effect's just not quite as strong. think it still makes a little more difference on the apparent sharpness than soft light does. So 50% sharpening with a high pass filter and hard light. And I think I'm happy enough with that to call it good. So there you go, folks. Still not a short video. Nearly an hour and a half again, despite my efforts to be quicker. Just be glad I did not have... I wasn't going at this from a blind start, so to speak. Or it might have been a 2.5 hour video. Every time I hit these, though, I always come up with just a slightly different result, and I think a little bit better each time. So there you have it. Still a little bit of noise out there, but I don't think that is so unrealistic, really, in the sense of, you know, if you were just imagining looking into space, you know, you'd probably see a little sort of haziness with any intermingling clouds. The stars are, you know, a little bit bloated, blurry. In fact, you know, we can do it. Let's try one more thing with a star reduction, star shrink. Let's reduce things down some, okay? I'm just going to maximize the radius, I believe. Whoops. Let me cancel that. I'm trying to edit the sharpening layer, so we need to get a merge layer once again. There we go. I'd really like to get rid of that coma. Never quite satisfied. Let's go back to our camera raw filter. Whoops. Defringe. I'm not seeing it pick up anything to really affect that. Okay. I'm not sure if it picked up on anything, but we'll still try and apply it. No, no real difference. Okay, so that is my end result. I hope this has been helpful. I apologize for the length. I wish you great days and clear nights.